Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rory O'Neill, Chief Marketing Officer at Checkout.com. I'm delighted to be joined by Pablo Fourez this afternoon. He's Chief Digital Officer at Mastercard. Pablo, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Pleasure to join you and everybody. Thank you.
Perfect. So look, I think we wanted to put out a title that people would be interested in. So I think we've bravely named this webinar "The Tech That Shapes the Future of Payments." So Pablo, no pressure to generate the conversation that keeps everybody interested. But look, I think it's obviously an amazing topic to delve into agentic commerce. We'll spend the next 30 minutes or so trying to deep dive, and obviously we'll have some time at the end for questions from the team that we can present. But I guess Pablo, let's start right at the beginning, right at the top. I mean, I think you'd have to be hiding under a rock if you hadn't heard about agents and the impacts they're going to have on our lives. I think whether it's Perplexity with Buy with Pro or Amazon with Buy for Me, and Google has AI mode disrupting checkout, and even Walmart I hear recently is announcing super agents that will change how we interact with Walmart. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the very basics of it, like what is agentic commerce and what is it going to do for us?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, very exciting. And indeed, you would need to be under a rock or just not using these amazing tools, like whether it be any of the ones that you mentioned, these tools are really helping us with our daily lives, right? And making it very easy to do a number of tasks, right? And so, and for example, I recently planned a trip, and for the first time, I researched the trip from A to Z, using an agent. And so I was saying, okay, it was a road trip. And so I was saying, oh, I'm comfortable with driving 5 hours every day maximum, and what type of hotels I wanted to stay at, like type of ratings that I wanted to have, and whether I want to have dinner activities that we were planning, like we were traveling, my wife and my daughter. And so it was a mix of interest, between hiking and shopping and other things, and so,
yeah.
And something that would have taken us, like probably many days over maybe a couple of weeks, like in the weekend, like certainly multiple hours, about 20 minutes we were set with an itinerary, a suggestion, etc. Right? And so and it was missing this last click of actually saying, can you actually book it for me? Like book all of the things I need to do, reserve the hotels, get the cars, like all of that. And so we're on the verge of making that possible, right? That's like just the next step, right? Helping actually do commerce and helping consumers, and businesses make it simpler to go from that search that is very personalized, that takes into account the personal context that you have in a very conversational interface, which is what was great and why it took me, like 20 minutes to prepare for that, right? With a whole debate around the table as we were doing it, to actually complete and make the here would have been multiple purchases, right? And so that's very, very exciting because the utility, it's obviously there for consumers, like all of us that are using this in our daily lives, we experience it. And
sorry, Pablo, just so I understand. So basically, it's a very complex discovery, right? You basically gave a whole load of very complex attributes effectively to a machine to do that discovery for you. And I guess agentic commerce is, completing the loop there and actually not just going out to collect that information, but actually make the purchase and actually make the payment, just like we do in the digital world today.
That's right. And so like the agent is actually able to perform actions. And so one thing is to help you with the search, but then to actually help you make the final purchase or multiple purchases. That's something that the agent could help you with. And I think it will multiply, there's so many use cases that you could see that this could be applicable, like where it's, tedious to do it yourself, like, or just inconvenient. For example, I don't know, like getting a restaurant in New York is kind of hard, like that's where I live, like getting concert tickets. That's one of the few things that I can do with my daughters, that they'll come with me,
Yeah.
So they go on sale at pretty bad times, and you need to try to find some good spots. And so how to do that, like, but just, like whatever it is that you're doing, like you can have now a personal assistant.
Yeah,
that's not only helping you with recommendations, but actually taking care of doing the purchase for you. And so that's what's
Got it.
coming, and that's what we want to enable. And what I'd say is like already, you can see the growth, like if you look at the numbers, for example, for ChatGPT, like every time that I look at it, the number seems to almost double, so now we're saying what, the latest figures, I think it's 800 million weekly active users, something like that, 2.5 billion searches on ChatGPT, like that's almost 1 trillion searches per year. That's, Google is 5 to 6, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's huge, right? And so now add this component that I can do commerce, and I can have the AI assistant help me with that. It's awesome, right? Now it opens a bunch of questions as to, is it secure? Is it safe? And how do we make it so? But that's why it's very interesting as well, right?
Yeah. But maybe let's dive into that actually, because it's a really good point, because obviously I don't think it's too grandiose to say that that trust is actually paramount in any form of commerce, actually, whether it's traditional or physical, in-person commerce, whether it's digital commerce. And I guess the thing we'd have to work to figure out is these personal assistants, these agents, are they shopping on our behalf? Are they assuming our identity? Like, I guess how do we think about putting trust back in the system, Pablo, when effectively machines are shopping on our behalf?
I mean, it's a new paradigm shift that I think that we're seeing, right? Like you're making like the reference from, like obviously we had the development of the internet and then mobile payments, and now we have agentic payments, right? And so it's probably as big. I don't know if it's bigger or not, but it's as big of a change that's coming, and so we're very excited to help consumers. Give them the choice, right, of how they want to transact and how do they want to do commerce. And now there's this amazing tool that's available. How can we make those tools to be something that consumers can trust and can use with trust, confidence, safety? And that's what we do every day, basically, on payments. And we've been working, I think I've been working like with Mastercard last 10 years on developing technologies that help secure basically payments. And these technologies we are now applying, if you want, to this new space. And they help us do that, right? They help us provide a great level of transparency around these transactions, so that everybody that is participating, whether it be the merchant that is, today one of the challenges is when I see basically on my website, if I see one of these agents making a purchase, it looks pretty much like a robot, right? It looks like a malicious thing because it doesn't behave like a human being would, right? And so it goes much faster. It would fill the form much faster. And so we need to develop basically interfaces to be able to recognize and identify the agents that are conducting commerce for the consumers, and those that we can trust versus those that may be malicious actors. And so that's a very important component. And then having, everybody, not only the merchant, but then every party in the financial chain that is facilitating this transaction, having increased visibility around this transaction and the data that goes to these transactions to be able to help and service consumers, during the life cycle of the purchase, right? Because obviously it's not just the one time that you make a purchase. You may have, as a merchant, you want to continue to have an engagement with that shopper. As a bank, if you authorize that purchase and if there's later on questions around the purchase, you want to be able to service and support, in our case, the cardholder, right? And all of that, is part of the problems that as an industry we need to solve for, and we need to bring to solve for these use cases. And that's what we're doing. So that's very exciting.
It makes no sense. We're basically having to rethink the entire, almost like payment lifecycle, so it can be conducted by a known agent or trusted agent as well as a human in commerce.
And we don't want to lose the human agency. And so one of the key principles, obviously, is that the agent is an assistant to you, right? And is doing things on your behalf, but you still maintain control as to what you want the agent to do for you, right? And that's a very important component. We actually we refer to the set of technologies that we are deploying and solutions that we're deploying around agentic payments as agent pay. as a systems of Mastercard that help facilitate these transactions and in a safe and secure way. And one of the key elements of that is this notion of what was the consumer's intent. As a consumer, what are you asking the agent to do for you? How can we capture that? What's the data that we need to capture to be able to have a record of the consumer's intention? And how can this data be shared across the different parties to the transaction so that everybody has transparency and can trust that this transaction is something that, like the cardholder or the actual user and not a fraudster, wanted to do, right?
So how does Agent Pay work then? I mean, what technologies does it build upon, Pablo, that we're already using that will then be, I guess, fit for purpose for those agent commerce use cases?
And so at the core of it, like we have a different set of technologies. One of the key ones that we are using that we introduced actually over 10 years ago is this concept of tokenization. And so tokenization, what it helps do though is rather than using your actual account number, we replace that with a token that is cryptographically signed so that it cannot be misappropriated. And so it's cryptographically secured, means that even if a fraudster got possession of this token, they cannot use it without your approval, basically. And the other thing that tokenization does is it provides basically traceability across all of the players, yourself, merchants, acquirers, issuers, us as a network, traceability and visibility of the transaction, and it helps identify what are the parties that were party to that transaction. And so in this case, we have a new party, which would be the agent, the AI agent, that is facilitating that purchase. And so by introducing the use of tokenized credentials, now every party in the system is able to identify that this transaction is being facilitated by an AI agent. The key piece of that is then in order to get access to tokens, agents then need to be registered, need to be onboarded. And so we have a process, what we call Know Your Agent, basically a KYC process to ensure that we have good parties that are onboarded into to facilitate payments. And so that we can differentiate and we can help merchants differentiate, like what's a good agent that is working on behalf of a consumer or a cardholder from these malicious potential actors that might take advantage of this technology, very powerful technology, to take advantage and to make exploits. And so that's the second key part of the benefits with tokenization, is that we have this visibility, this transparency, and this ability to only accept payments from trusted parties. So that's one of the key technologies. Another one that's incredibly useful, obviously, is authentication. And so this idea that I, as a consumer, need to be able to authorize the payment, authorize the purchase, or what I'm asking the agent to do. But I want to do that in context of the experience that I'm having. And so, we recently have introduced technologies around biometric authentication on device that you can do within digital wallets, but you can do it within an agent. You can use things like payment passkeys to authenticate with biometrics on your device, and to have transactions that are secured with strong two-factor authentication, so that there's no doubt whether you consented to the transaction or not. And so that's a second key piece of technology that we're introducing with agentic payments.
Got it. And if I can go back a little bit on, because I want to touch on some of those things that you've mentioned there, like auth and then the in context experience, for sure, just to go a little deeper on Agent Pay. But again, maybe and forgive my question, but how different is the passkeys used in this use case? How different are they to, Mastercard payment passkeys, or how different are agent tokens to network tokens, the technology stack that we've been using in digital commerce for some time, working with Mastercard?
So it's an extension, I would say. So it's the same technology stack, and so then we're adding basically additional data to enrich basically the data for agentic transactions. And so the data that is really the new piece of data is a couple of things. One is identifying this new party to the transaction, right? And so typically you could have a digital wallet, and you could have, obviously, you have a merchant. All of those parties are still potential parties to the transactions, but you have now an agent that's facilitating this interaction. And so we need to identify for that transaction this this new player. So that's one additional piece of data that will be carried with the transaction. Identify and then the second big element is this notion, as I was talking to before, of what was the intent of the user. I asked, for example, I don't know, like I'm asking an agent, if I take a very simple example, buy me a pair of shoes, like Adidas, this model, size 8 in my case, right? And so that data can be captured, when the consumer does the authentication. And so the same payment passkey technology can be used as we are using for mobile payments or for browser-based payments. But now we are attaching this consent, not just to the amount that the person, how much, you're paying, it's going to cost you 80 euros, for example, or $80, and who is the payee, like what's the merchant that I'm doing the transaction with. That's also obviously a very important aspect of the transaction. But now on top of that, because there is a party between me and the merchant, and I'm not shopping directly on the merchant's website or on the merchant's app, I need to carry this additional piece of data in a secure way that says, what did I want the agent to buy, right? And so that can be authenticated, the consent basically of the consumer can be captured around what was their intent. And so buy me that pair of shoes, size 8 from Adidas, like at this merchant for $80, right? And that data can actually carry with a token alongside the different players in the transaction so that everybody has visibility on it. So that's one of the key differences. It's basically enriching and carrying more data with, that is authenticated alongside the tokens. But otherwise, from an acquiring perspective, from an issuing perspective, it's actually building, and from a network perspective and the different players, we are building on existing technologies that we have been building together for quite a few years now.
I think it's a very interesting paradigm, isn't it? That like we've got such a disruptive change in the way that people will be discovering, how effectively they search, scroll, and shop on the internet, and it will be fundamentally changed. But effectively, what we're doing in collaboration with you guys at Mastercard is actually building on existing technology to add data into tokens that then takes it into this use case. And I just want to double check on one thing you mentioned. So all parties in the ecosystem, in that payment ecosystem, will be notified of effectively the identity and the consent and intent of the shopper in this kind of new paradigm.
All right, great. So so what that means is basically, if you think about it, that's something that we have been down the road already, with mobile payments and the introductions that I was referring to before of payment passkeys. We introduced this ability for having authenticated transactions that were done within a mobile application or at the merchant's website, and where we carry this, signal that this transaction is fully authenticated with a token. And so here we are adding this additional layer of visibility around the consumer's intent. And obviously that requires some changes. And but so from what I can tell with the discussions that we are having with the different parties involved, they are very keen basically to solve this problem, because everybody's interested in building trust into these payments. And so what does it take to get to that level of trust, right? And so what we are basically advocating for is this additional exchange of data so that everybody has visibility and can trust these transactions. And then you can have sharing this data in a way that is non-repudiable and can be trusted. And it's in everybody's, really benefit, to work as an industry to drive that. And one of the things that we're going to need to do within this is to drive some standardization, I believe, so that this adoption, happens, in a good way. And so, for example, we have now a standard around the use of MCP servers that can be used to expose, APIs to agents. That's one of the key things that merchants are, starting to work on, saying, how can I change my interfaces? I had to shift from web, browsing to mobile when that happened, I had to think about responsive web design, right? That was not really something before, right? And so, but now I need to think about how can I have my site with data that can be discoverable and APIs that can be easily discoverable by an agent. And so that requires some work, right? And for that, there is collaboration in the industry around standards, right? Like the one I refer to. Google recently introduced A2A, agent-to-agent protocol. And so we are very interested in to saying, as we leverage those types of standards, what type of data needs to be carried for payments to secure the payments. And so that's basically the token data, the authentication data, the intent data that allows the parties to, understand the scope of the transaction and to fulfill basically the transaction.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And look, I definitely want to get into how we're working together on some of the Mastercard APIs and the kind of sandbox environments and use cases that we're seeing. But just before I leave the challenges, Pablo, it would feel wrong not to ask you about what are the additional dangers on fraud and maybe even disputes as we think about typical digital commerce now in an agentic world. Like I know that you talked a lot about the tokens and the data and the things that need to be shared across all parties, but is there a propensity for a new type of fraud here, or just more accelerated fraud, or even fraud that just goes faster?
I think fraudster has always a cutting edge, right? And so definitely there is incremental risk, and we'll see fraudster leveraging these tools to their advantage as well. And so on the one hand, at Mastercard, we're definitely investing a lot to leverage these tools to detect fraud more quickly on the network and to help our customers with that. The part of the reason of wanting to have better and higher quality data for everybody involved is actually related to being able to distinguish basically fraudulent transactions from non-fraudulent transactions. So that's a key element. And then beyond the front, I think when you have support for the transactions from consumers, that may be asking their bank, or maybe they might not recall the transaction, or maybe some people might see this as an opportunity to say, well, what if I challenge it and I said I didn't do it because the agent did it? Could I get away with it? That type of fraud, right? Well, so then if the bank has access to this level of data, they'll be able to handle those types of queries in an effective way, right? If they didn't have it, and if it was completely transparent to them, they would be blind to what would happen, and then we would potentially see a higher level of problems with these transactions than we would otherwise see, right? And so sharing this data, and what we're trying to do is so that basically we can address those, and hopefully have less issues with these transactions than what we regularly have, right? For example, one of the key elements that we're working on from the point of view of the agent to merchant interface as it relates to commerce is enabling merchants to indicate what is the important things that the consumer needs to be aware of when they're making a purchase. And that is very specific to each merchant use case or industry, right? And so the example of the shoes, well, obviously the brand and the size and the color, I guess, and the model are very important, right? If I'm buying an airline ticket, I want to know which city I'm leaving from, which city I'm going. I want to know the date, obviously the airline, but I want to know the fare class and whether I can refund it or not. And so having the merchant being able, through this merchant interface that we are creating a specification for, be in control of what's displayed to the user when that consent and that intent is captured, so that then that doesn't lead then to problems later on, is something that we can help, and we can have then the agent, as it becomes, it can make sure that it helps you understand, hey, watch out, this ticket is not refundable, or I'm buying this ticket for the concert, are you sure that you're available? It seems that you're going to be on vacation that week, and so hopefully this technology is going to help avoid issues that that we would otherwise have, because we have now an intelligent assistant that can help us all with things that you know.
I think that's super interesting. I hadn't thought of that before. And of course, you're dead right that fraudsters are latest and greatest when it comes to tech and those sort of pieces. I hadn't thought that actually the opportunity for agents is actually to put more data in the system and share it with more parties. So actually we get greater intelligence about consumer behaviors and defend against fraud. I guess it's super interesting. Obviously, Checkout being a digital payment provider and only focusing on digital. We've often spent time trying to, obviously use our machine learning or AI to get more data into the system so we can increase acceptance rates and decrease fraud and do it the best cost that's possible. It's interesting to see how that paradigm will shift. I'm going to, if it's okay, Pablo, I'm just going to, I'll try and weave in a couple of questions if they're relevant that we've got from people that are listening in. And I think we had a couple of questions around, first of all, like just clarification on what types of wallets are we talking about? Is this, an Apple, Google wallet type only, or is this decentralized wallets from Mastercard?
So my sense is that again, like this can evolve a number of different ways, but if you look, for example, what Perplexity started doing with, as you referred to early in the call, they're effectively enabling users that have an account on file with them to use those cards to make payments, right? And so you could very well see agents that have a consumer application that develop some sort of digital wallet, like that they manage for consumers. And that's something that we would be, like with the right level of security we can bring to that and can support, right? You could use a digital wallet on the phone, if that makes sense. You could also use, one of the things that we've been discussing with many merchants is, one of the questions around these types of payments is, do I lose touch with my customer, right? And how do I actually continue to have that affinity with the shopper, right? My customer, right? And from a payments perspective, what that translates to is that customer may have, a relationship with me, a loyalty with me, an account on file with me that I want to continue to use, so that I can serve this customer across the different channels, right? Whether they come from my website, my mobile app, or an agentic interface. And so we are working to enable what we call a logged-in experience, right? So that the user is identified and can be logged into the merchant through the agentic interface, so that then the merchant can personalize the experience for the user, whether it be the results of the search itself, to put the right goods, or services that might be relevant for that user, in the response to the agent search, but also, like they can continue to benefit from free shipping if you're offering free shipping, or loyalty points if you're buying from an airline, and so forth, right? All of these things need to carry through into this new commerce experience. And so we could use the account on file that the merchant has to facilitate these transactions, and those cards can be tokenized, and we can leverage those tokens. And so I don't think it would be just one way. And also, obviously think about the different types of use case or user experiences that might come, right? And you're seeing lots of innovation, people trying different things. Like if I am on I watch an outfit in Instagram, right? And I want to say I would be cool, like if I had those glasses when I'm going to the Bad Bunny concert, so why don't I buy those glasses? And right there I can and I can have an agent help me search those glasses and find me a few retailers where I could buy them. And so that might be a completely different experience. You see, I think the experience will be varied. Agents, I think, will have many more than perhaps we think. Obviously, there is the large ones, with the scale that we were talking about. But I think this technology can help consumers and businesses in a variety of ways. And so I don't think it's just one thing, this digital wallet. I think it's broader than that.
Got it. No, it's really helpful. Really helpful. I think I was reading the other day that social media shopping is up 139% this year alone, Pablo. So I think that use case is definitely valid.
A good one, right?
ready for
I was speaking for experience.
It seems that way. So it's super interesting. So actually one question on the sort of the technology and the way that we're sharing the data. We had a couple of questions on just talk us a little bit more about this intent. Like, what do we mean by intent? Obviously, it's a very big concept when we talk about consumer intent, certainly for marketeers and others. But like, wondering if you can just define that a bit more richly in the context of the data that's captured.
Yeah, and so I mean, if I give you an example, but it's only one example. But if I take back this example of the shoes, it's a simple example. So that it would be that what's the SKU, if you want, that as a merchant you had when you go onto your website and the consumer is doing a regular normal transaction on the website, you'll have a description of what I'm buying, right? You have how many of the items I'm buying. Is it one pair of shoes, two pairs of shoes? I have the size. Maybe the color, right? If there's different colors, the price obviously associated with that, and then you may have taxes, you may have shipping, and the total amount, right? And so that would be an intent. But you could then think about, okay, if I'm buying, if I'm asking an agent to help me buy something that I'm doing across multiple merchants, then that intent that I'm consenting to is a more complex data object, right? That has the same intent that I just described, but across 3 merchants. For example, if I'm booking a trip and I need to have an airline, a car rental, and a hotel, then I have those 3 things within one set of data, right? And then obviously there is, and so that's a different level of complexity. And as I was saying before, what data needs to be captured depends on what is it that I'm buying. And so therefore, part of this is enabling the merchants to define what is within a data structure, to define what is the data that needs to be captured. And so this is the data that the agents are today, when they're scrapping the websites or to help the user with a search or what's returned from the Google search that they're using. But the same data, if you deploy an MCP server and an agentic interface as a merchant, you can actually define what is the data that you need to have displayed. And so that's the data that we want to capture. I would say that then obviously the real complexity in this would lie when I have not immediate purchases, but I have more deferred type of scenarios where I say, I'd like you to buy me this pair of shoes, and I've defined them, but then I say, I want you to buy them if the price is, gets from, right now it says 150, and, buy it if it comes below 100, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have like a well-defined data object, and you have the price, which is variable, right? And then I think about it like a bit like if you go and you place a limit order for a stock, right? So same type of behavior, right? And so I'd be able to open this intent, and then it might be fulfilled by the agent at a later point in time. And so how well that is defined so that we're sure that we capture the user's intent.
Yeah, exactly. And then look, I think there's a delineation between what's the agent's intent and then what's the human's intent. And obviously the human, in many of these use cases, will set the intent or set the preferences.
That's right. Yeah, and I might set a number of limits, I might say, I'm comfortable with having when do I want to approve the transactions? Initially, everybody's starting with very well-defined scope, right? That we need to capture. And I imagine as we get more familiar with the technology and which merchants I'm using the agent to shop at, right? The type of, if it's a concert, like the example that I gave, it will happen sometime in the future, because that's the benefit that the technology will bring to me. I don't need to wake up at midnight on Saturday to be waiting to be able to get first in line with those tickets. And so I think this is going to evolve, and that our role is basically to capture the right data to make the difference between one thing and another.
And I think that's it's super interesting. I think it was your CMO Raja who was talking a lot about the needs for brands to think about how they market to agents who then capture information, from the consumers. I think there's as many opportunities for brands to capture the preferences and settings, if you like, that are put into agent preferences or attributes. It tells us way more about the sort of buying process, if you like, which is
that's right. And we're very keen, basically, to really help merchants in general and engage with consumers through this channel. That's a shift in how that's done. But I think there's an opportunity to help have a personalized experience through that, like there was not before. And so it's a bit when I have these conversations, you can go from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum between very excited or a little bit frightful. But I think this is worth jumping in and whether you're an issuer, whether you're a merchant, whether you're somewhere to facilitate these transactions that we're trying to do, and to jump in to do it in a way that can be trusted and can be secured.
So super. So we've had a couple of questions on subscriptions. Pablo, particularly, like, how would this work with subscription models or recurring payments? Like anything particularly you could illuminate us with there?
So in general, I'm not sure that it makes a huge difference, basically. I do think that when you're actually in the process of subscribing to something, it's important to actually that's another piece of data that's different, right? And so it's one of those examples where you say, well, I'm subscribing and I'm gonna be paying this fee monthly, and it's gonna be so much every month for this merchant, as opposed to it being a just one-time purchase. And so today, in general, when consumers enter into subscription types of payments, as an issuer or as a network, you may not have a full information regarding this. Like you don't have full transparency. You may know it's a recurring payment, but you don't know the periodicity necessarily, and you learn it over time. Here, there's an opportunity actually to capture that data upfront, and so that there's visibility since the beginning around what that is as well.
Got it. Yeah, got it. And we've got a couple of questions more on, I guess, the models and the ecosystem. And Pablo, I know you don't have a crystal ball there with you, but there's a few questions on, like, what's your opinion on who's going to orchestrate this consumer? Is it Apple? Is it Google? Is it Amazon, Meta? And it'd be interesting to get your opinion there. But I guess maybe a better question is more about how, how do the branded agentic models like, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and their hosted agents, how will they behave differently to maybe even merchant agents? Like, I mean, how do we see that playing out?
Yeah, and so I think there will be agent to agent interfaces and communications to help the consumers and the businesses that are selling things to consumers, find the best terms and the best options, and those options not just being price, but actually being, what is it that I'm trying to find, and the more holistic view on the relationship and on the value proposition that's offered to me, right? So that's incredibly important. I don't know if I have, obviously, like some of these players that have the scale that we were talking about, they'll have a very strong influence on how things evolve, right? Business models, are probably going to change somewhat. If you look at saying that now this is almost 1 trillion new searches, Google is 5 to 6 trillion. So obviously that has an impact and will have some type of impact. But I think there's an opportunity to, by engaging, trying to figure out together what are the right models that makes the most sense. And from our perspective, I think we're trying to do a principle-based approach, certainly around this idea of we want to do things that bring trust, brings consumer choice, the security, authentication, the transmission of data are all things that are going after that objective of providing visibility, trust into the system. But yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say that it's early days. There's a huge amount of investment, and there is basically a strong is moving fast. And so I think everybody that's looking at this, it's a bit of a call to action, to actually start looking at it. We have APIs that are available in Sandbox. We're working with partners like yourselves on how to bring this technology and this type of commerce to merchants and to consumers. And by doing it, we'll be able to influence it in a direction that we think is positive for the different players.
I think I have two questions left, actually, Pablo, for you. One is consumer side, one is merchant side. And maybe we could just spend a minute or so. Is there any, I mean, there's amazing statistics these days about, 17% of Generation Zs shop online, check out does a trust index every year around the world, looking at the various degrees of trust that people have in digital commerce, and identity is something that's always mentioned and always covered. But
Yeah.
is there any consumer groups in particular that you're seeing exploring these kind of agentic models at Mastercard?
So I don't know if this is limited to just, but there's definitely an age, like adoption curve, like that is different.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of statistics around that, but I really think this is a technology that will be very widely adopted. Also, it's very interesting that it's not just like starting only US or whatnot, even if those some of these companies, but you have it coming from all over the world, right? And adoption is very wide and varied around that as well. And so, yeah.
It's just super interesting. So given the the widespread usage, and obviously we're seeing some generational trends as ever with new technologies, I think that we mentioned a little bit about companies like Checkout and Mastercard are partnering around the context of the APIs and sandboxes. What's your 1, 2, 3 for merchants that are thinking about this at this stage? Like what's your advice that they should think about?
So I think one of the first things is, as I was referring to, from the change from web to mobile, there was this thing about making your website responsive. This idea of how you make your website discoverable to agents with the right technology tools. That's, I think, very important. And then in relation specifically to payments, how to enable, like, if you're already, most likely you're already supporting tokenization, so you're 80% there, right? Because you already are working with a payment service provider or your acquirer to enable tokenized payments or digital wallet types of payments. There's additional technology that we're making available as part of Agent Pay, so that you have visibility on the intent and the consent of the consumer. And preparing for that would be an important aspect of getting ready for these payments. And and then the third thing I would say is the online use cases that we have been talking about. This is just one set of use cases. But I think they're going to be like a lot of them, right? And it's particularly exciting, perhaps. We'll have online, in store. We have these social media use cases. We'll have like plenty of different use cases, and look at your business and say, how can I take advantage of this technology directly as well to provide better user experiences for consumers, better commerce. And if you have some ideas related to that, we are very keen to work on all three, right? And help you with all three, and partner with, Checkout and others to make that happen. But those are, would be the three
things. No, it's super useful, Pablo. Thank you. I think it's again, like I think 71% of US shoppers cite convenience as the number one reason for buying online. And I think that when we think about this new agent channel, actually we can just start to think about a great experience, a convenient experience that actually delights consumers when they're interacting with incredible brands. But
100%.
I think there's many interruptions or interventions required on discovery and how we're going to market to agents and how agents will discover our websites. I think maybe it's less about individual words and nice pictures these days, in the agent world. It's much more about preferences, but it's super helpful to do that. And again, I think that if there are merchants that are listening to this webcast that want to get in touch with Checkout and talk through some use cases, we have a great partnership. We've got access to those APIs. We're working on those use cases with merchants, and we would invite anybody to get in touch and sort of look for information or work with us on those use cases to build that agentic commerce. So Pablo, first of all, thank you very much. Really enjoyed the conversation. It was really great to talk to you. And thank you very much for your time. I think sorry for anybody that asked questions that we didn't quite get to. We had way more than we could get to, Pablo, in that regard. So apologies for that. We'll try and answer some of those as we go through. And look, I think that this is a fascinating conversation. It's really interesting to listen to you about how we need to build trust in this new paradigm and how we can use more data to actually take care of identity and consent and give more information to the ecosystem, whether that's issuers, acquirers, and of course merchants that need to kind of work in this new paradigm too. So again, Pablo, thank you. Really appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for listening to the webcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.